This vodcast is based on the information on page 422, where Myers talks about spinal cord research, spinal cord injury research in relationship to the Cannon-Bard theory. So spinal cord injuries are sometimes used to either to strengthen the claims of a theory of emotion or to weaken the claims of a specific theory of emotion. Now, the two theories that are most often mentioned in spinal cord injury research are James Lange and Cannon-Bard. Now, James Lange seems to be obvious, right? Because in certain spinal cord injuries, there's a spectrum of spinal cord injuries, but in certain spinal cord injuries, the brain is no longer receiving messages from the body, or is receiving messages that have now been, the arousal level has been lessened or dampened. That connection between the brain and the body has been compromised. So James Lange theory would suggest that without feedback from the nervous system, the organs, he called them the visceral organs, pancreas, right, the heart, those send messages. And remember how we said earlier that all of the theories of emotion have cognition as an ingredient. Some of them just prioritize it less. But this is kind of where this awareness happens, this conscious awareness. So with spinal cord injuries, we should see a reduction in the conscious experience of emotion if we were looking for support for James Lange. If people with spinal cord injuries still experienced emotion, that would weaken James Lange, because James Lange believes that physiological arousal is a necessary and essential component to experiencing emotion. So again, if for cases of spinal cord injuries, if people were not experiencing this, right, James Lange would say, yes, of course they shouldn't experience emotion to the same extent or at all. Now, if they were experiencing it, again, that would weaken the James Lange theory, because supposedly you can't have this without this. Now, for Cannon-Bard theory, what's happening before right here is that Cannon-Bard believed the information from, in the Cannon-Bard theory, we believe the information from the stimulus goes to the thalamus. That's what they believed, and to some extent they are accurate in that. And then they believe the thalamus kind of acts as a coordinator and sends information to the cortex. And that's where we have the conscious experience of emotion, and simultaneously sends it to the nervous system. And that's where the arousal happens, the heart, the pancreas, etc., neurons. So they did not believe that this happened separately and simultaneously. I'm going to abbreviate. So they did not believe that the conscious experience of emotion was predicated on physiological arousal. They believed that happened separately by the information being sent to the cortex. Now, Cannon-Bard theory in relationship to spinal cord injuries, this is very interesting. With people with injuries higher on the spinal column, what they report actually is a reduction in the conscious experience of the emotion. So they don't feel as much fear. They don't feel as much anger. They still feel some. So that weakens the Cannon-Bard theory, because that shows that physiological arousal does influence the conscious experience of emotion, where Cannon-Bard saw them as separate, simultaneous and separate. So again, if there is a reduction in the conscious experience of an emotion due to a reduction in the physiological arousal due to a spinal cord injury, that weakens Cannon-Bard, because Cannon-Bard assumed that bodily responses don't have an influence on the conscious experience of emotion. They believe that was handled by the cortex, and that message was sent to the thalamus. Now, if you want to go through this step by step, look at the next slide. You don't have to worry too much about this last one. We'll deal with that probably later, but it is interesting. So you'll have some time to read that. If you have any questions, please bring them to class. Thank you.